Do y'all want to be a finance pro? Or at least, do you want to be surrounded by finance pros for the next 4 years of your life? Well, if you do, then you've come to the right video because today I will be talking about how I got into the best business program in Canada. Hi, my name is Linda. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'll be talking about how I got into UBC Sauder today. I picked green for the background because that's the color of Sauder, and I also whipped out my blazer to be a better business girly for you guys. So I really hope you enjoy. So let's start by telling my story of why business, why UBC, and how I got here. For starters, I'm from Calgary, Alberta, so I went to public high school in Alberta. It was a pretty standard school with a couple of AP classes. My top choice for a university was actually one in the US, but I didn't have money, my parents didn't have money, so UBC was the next best option. I picked UBC because I really loved big cities and I wanted to go to a bigger city from Calgary. When you're from Calgary, your only two options for a bigger city are Toronto and Vancouver. I did really want to go to U of T until I found out that their marketing program was at their Mississauga campus, and I was immediately like, hell no, UBC it is. I also thought UBC's program was just better suited towards me, but Rotman is also a great business school. I chose business because of my extracurricular experiences, which I'll talk more about later, but there also wasn't any subject in high school that I was particularly passionate about, so I was like, business is the most general and just made the most sense to me. I don't regret it. I love and hate business school at the same time, but I do think that it's the right program for me. Something about me actually is that I didn't know Sauder was really competitive until after I applied. My guidance counselor at the time was like, oh yeah, like UBC has a 50% acceptance rate, you totally got this. And after I applied, I looked up the acceptance rate, and I remember messaging my friends having a heart attack thinking I wouldn't make it in because the acceptance rate was so low. Clearly I still did it and we're here, so I definitely think I have some advice that I could share. Let's start by talking about the stats and the numbers. I was smart in high school, but definitely not as smart as some of the people around me. I had an average of about 91 to 92%. However, if you're from Alberta, BC actually gives you a 4% average boost because I guess Alberta's curriculum is harder. So that ended up translating to about a 95 to 96% in BC grades. 95 to 96 is still pretty standard at Sauder. Most people here have this grade. So I would say that that's the standard for Sauder, even though that sounds really high. I also submitted two of my AP classes, which was AP Bio and AP European History. For AP Bio, I got a 4 on the test, and AP European History, I got a 5. At the time, I was also taking AP Calculus, but I didn't get my AP Calculus grade until the end of grade 12 when I had already been accepted. Towards the end, when I had to do a final submission of my grade, my average was a little bit more inflated because of COVID, so it ended up being about a 94%, which is a 98% in BC grades. At the time, I also submitted my AP Calculus grade because I had it, and that ended up being a 5. The next part, which is your extracurriculars, UBC Sauder is actually a school that puts half of the emphasis on your grades and the other half on your personal profile, which includes your extracurriculars. So this part is important. I was high-key a band nerd in high school. So I was in concert band, concert choir, jazz band, jazz choir, every single ensemble, you name it, I was there. On top of that, I also took piano, flute, and theory lessons outside of school. I was one of those Asian kids whose parents made them play piano since they were small, so I kept playing piano all the way up until the end of my grade 12 year. In terms of clubs at school, I was an active member of student council, and then I was also the co-president of our leadership club. Leadership club in high school is just more like an events club where you plan a lot of the school programming and events that go on during the school. My next extracurricular is this program called Junior Achievement. It's pretty big in Canada, but I think it's exceptionally big in Alberta, and it's essentially a program where you and a bunch of other high school kids come together for 18 weeks to build a business with a product. You elect your own VPs, sell your stuff, and maybe make a return on investment of $20. I do still think that Junior Achievement really did help me because in the 3 years that I participated in the program, there was 1 year where I was in the top 5 of marketing VPs, and then I was also selected as an ambassador for student leadership for one of the years. 2 of the years, my company was also in the top 5 for Company of the Year, and also for 2 of the years, my company won the Most Sustainable Company of the Year. There was a lot that went on there, and it definitely did help boost my application, I think. My last extracurricular, which wasn't really an extracurricular but I still included, was this internship I had between my 11th and 12th grade. So my band teacher had a lot of connections in the city, and I ended up working for a music store to help them repair and test woodwind instruments. It's a very, very unique skill that most people probably wouldn't have, because I now know how to fix a flute. So that maybe helped, but that also maybe didn't. I don't really know. I included it because I thought it was cool and could set me out from some other candidates. So that brings me to the personal profile. The personal profile is part of the application where they actually ask you about your extracurriculars, and there's also a few other questions that you have to answer just for them to get to know you. I thought mine was pretty mid, to be honest, because in high school I was one of those people that hated being vulnerable and hated sharing their challenges, so I kept mine to a very surface level. Now I do kind of regret it, because I do wish that I talked a little bit more about my struggles and how they turned me into the person that I am today. The first couple of questions are pretty standard. They just ask you to expand on your extracurriculars and what you did in them. I do really wish I had my personal profile still and I could read it out to you guys, but I think I was so traumatized from the application that I deleted it right after. I literally dove through the depths of my Google Drive to try to find them, and I found absolutely nothing. So I'm sorry, I can't read anything out because I don't have it. I'm just going off of my memory here. For the essay questions that I did get, one of them asked me about my leadership style, the next one asked about an unfamiliar situation that I was in and what I did, and the last one asked about a subject that I was very passionate about. For my leadership style, I basically just talked about my experience having leadership positions in both junior achievement and as the co-president of a club. And then for unfamiliar situations, I talked a lot about meeting new people for 18 weeks and starting a business with them. And then for a subject that I was passionate in, I talked about sustainability. So based off of that, you can tell that mine were really surface level and pretty basic answers. So I do wish that they were better, but I still made it in, and there's no point in me thinking about that now. Next part, which is the interview. I was so bad at doing this interview, I thought mine was literally terrible. I ran out of time for both of the questions. My questions though were at least pretty standard. The first one asked me about my leadership style again, and then the second question I got was super unmemorable because I literally don't remember at all, but I think it was a situational question where they ask you what you would do in this situation or describe a time how you reacted in this type of situation. I also do know that there are a couple of curveball questions, so this really depends. I know somebody who was applying the same year that I was who got a question of which dead person would you have dinner with and why, so just be prepared to answer basic interview questions, but also be prepared for a few of the odd ones out there. Something about this section is that you really should practice a lot. Practice as much as you can, record yourself, listen to it, do whatever you can to practice. Don't be like me. And don't run out of time, please. That brings me to the last section, which is last tips on applying to UBC or UBC Sauder. The first one is you really should emphasize your leadership skills. I know UBC Sauder focuses a lot on leadership potential, so if you have any experiences where you took a leadership role, talk about it. Something else to prepare is you should also just jot down on a piece of paper all of your experiences, what you've learned from most of your experiences, and your values and how other people would describe you. This will also help you reflect on who you are as a person to decide how you're going to approach your personal profile. The next piece of advice is pretty straightforward. Be yourself. When you pick a university, you want to make sure you're a good fit because you want to make sure you will enjoy the school, so therefore it's really important to be yourself. You should also apply early and call the school if you have any questions about the application. I called to ask a few times and they were really helpful when answering the questions. The next part is to read your application very, very carefully. I remember when I was doing mine, there was a question of, did you attend an English-speaking high school for 4 years? And I stupidly checked no, because Alberta only has 3 years of high school. So they literally thought I was an international student until February when I called them and was like, hey, why is my application taking so long? And then I fixed it, and within 1 week I got my acceptance. So read it super carefully, don't make the same mistakes that I made. That's all I have to say today on how I got into UBC Sauder. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below or DM me on Instagram above. If you like my college content so far, please consider subscribing because I have lots more to come. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.